Hi, everyone. So glad to see you today. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to have our next speaker today, who is a great friend and colleague of mine. I was fortunate enough to meet Jimmy Warren, several years ago, and he was presenting. And I was so impressed with everything he had to say that I went running up afterwards because I heard him say during his presentation that he was retiring. And so I recruited him to come work with us in South Dakota. And now in Arizona, I've also brought him here because he has such a wealth of knowledge and experience as a filmmaker, as an educator in the tribal vocational rehabilitation system, across disability, and so many other areas. And he's here today to share with all of us some of the things that would help us address services and supports and increased collaborations. And so I'm not going to take his time. I'm going to turn it over to him. So Jimmy Warren, welcome. We're so grateful that you're here. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And it's a great pleasure to be with you here today. And it's nice to be able to be working with Arizona partners again. So Wendy, thank you. Twice you've pulled me back in when I thought I was retired. As you mentioned, I was at San Diego State University for 22 years, a little bit over 22 years, and focused my work on tribal vocational rehabilitation, Indian disability issues, advocacy, and continuing education opportunities for Indian country. So back at San Diego State, I created a few programs focused on Indian country. And some of you may remember it. I see some familiar names here. So hello to my friends from Tribal VR. So it's a pleasure to see you, see your names anyway. But, and please, if you have some stuff to add, please put them in the chat box so we can discuss some more recent developments in tribal voc rehab, particularly with COVID challenges. So please share some of the things that you're doing out there with your tribal VR program so that everyone can gain that knowledge together. So again, when I was at San Diego State, I created the Center for American Indian Rehabilitation and Education, CARE, which housed the Pet Air programs, which I'll show in my PowerPoint shortly. And I got into rehabilitation and disability issues as a result of my father, Jim Sr., who had MS for 37 years. And I learned as a young person, a teenager, when he got the disease, the MS, that suddenly I was an advocate and I didn't even know what the word meant yet. So we were just getting in high school when Dad was starting to contract MS. So my brother and I, as youngsters, would go into restaurants or stores or whatever and kind of scout out pre-ADA access. So we were advocates, and I'd be the one to go into the back through the kitchen. So they'd always, I'd get some unique looks from people. Who is this guy? Stranger walking through a kitchen or through a back door of a store or whatever, because we would do everything possible to make sure Dad could be included regardless of his disability. So that's how I became an advocate and a change agent, if you will, to represent disability. And then of course, my mom being a strong res woman, growing up on Pine Ridge Reservation and raising my brother and I to you know, respect our Lakota ways and to represent our generations as best as possible. I noticed the similarities between Native culture and disability culture. And that was a reality that kind of was an awakening for me, that light bulb going off, if you will, showing me that these two cultures are very neglected. And they're so much impactful to my daily living as a human being and my family. So that's why I wanted to make sure we did something to advocate in terms of how can we make things better for Indian country and disability. So that's kind of a story of how I got into this business. And it's been a great pleasure to work with not only Tribal VR, but the USEDS nationally. Wendy had me present my documentary at her symposium at University of South Dakota. And then, as she said, when I said I was retired, she pulled me back in, and now I created a few programs with the team there at USED in South Dakota, and now we have the Oyate Circle, which is wonderful to create a program that is focused on Indian country disability. And we're not only going to be serving the 9 reservations, 9 tribal nations in South Dakota, but we're going national. Just yesterday, Wayne Weston, my Tahashi, he runs the Oyate Circle. He's the coordinator of the program. I kind of hijacked him. I joked that I went on a raiding party to Oglala Lakota College and recruited him to join us at USD with the new Oyate Circle. And Wendy's familiar with Wayne's work. He was the disability coordinator for the Oglala Lakota College, one of our tribal colleges. So he has a wealth of experience, not only in education and disability, but most importantly, as a traditional tribal man. I think he does a great job of doing the comparative analysis and bridging those 2 cultures so that we can be in the same circle together. And we're very proud of his work and having him on the team. So Wendy, thank you for allowing me to come back into academia and create some of these programs at USD. And now she's got me at U of A. So now I'm going to help create some programs at U of A to address Indian country disability and expand on some of the work that I did with them in the 90s. With their research and training center. And I see some folks from Northern Arizona University, the American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation Technical Assistance Center as well. So that's another great resource available to not only Tribal VR, but our state partners and anyone interested in disability services that relate to employment and empowerment. Empowerment is a key term for me. And I saw my dad as a strong man with a disability continuing to work as his disability progressed. Eventually that disability became too significant for him to continue work, but you know, that gave me an example of what people can do with an empowerment focus, not only for them individually, but for the programs that they work with in Indian country. So that has been a great pleasure to create programs, and I'm looking forward to creating some things at U of A. And again, I must mention I'm a Sun Devil, so it's a catharsis process working with U of A. And I have before in the 90s, and Wendy asked me to come back and help out and create some more programs. So it's a pleasure to utilize academia to impact Indian country in a good way. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll get onto the PowerPoint. And hopefully everybody can see that okay.
Looks great.
So, very good. The symbol there to the right-hand side of your screen, looking at it, is the eagle. That's the CANAR logo. And CANAR is Consortium of Administrators for Native American Rehabilitation. So that's a program I'll be discussing that was started by Dr. Bobby Atkins at San Diego State University with her Rehabilitation Cultural Diversity Initiative grant. So, and that's how I started working in 1993 after I got my master's at San Diego State. They hired me on right after. So currently I work, I own Warrior Society Development. It's my consulting company that I work with University of South Dakota as well as University of Arizona and a multitude of other partners that I work with. And under that umbrella of Warrior Society Development is my production company where I make documentary films and short films. So I'm going to be doing one later today about tribal sovereignty. And 50 years ago this month, President Nixon had an historic speech at the White House that started self-determination and tribal sovereignty as law of the land. So I'm going to be addressing that in my next film. So Indian country, I know we have a lot of folks online that are very familiar with Indian country. So please allow me to just discuss some of the basics, Indian 101 for a minute here. One of the things that I always encourage my participants and students and folks that are listening to my discussion is always remember the diversity of Indian country. Indian curriculum and a lot of the American perspectives of Indian country is that we are a homogenized group. And when you think of Hollywood as an example, a microcosm of society, they tend to focus on Plains Indians because everybody's wearing feathers according to Hollywood. But many of the tribes do not, as you see here, there is a wealth of diversity in Indian country, and over 580 tribes recognized and over 100 tribes unrecognized by federal and state governments. So there's a wealth of diversity in Indian country, and as you see here on the map, you see the tribal lands identified, and in the center there in Oklahoma, this month the Supreme Court made a very significant decision for the Oklahoma tribes in terms of Indian land and Indian sovereignty. So now with that Supreme Court decision, I would imagine there'll be a lot more Supreme Court cases addressing land issues and sovereignty issues for Indian country, which would include education and disability programs. So when you look at the center of the country there, that was Indian land till perpetuity, and obviously Oklahoma as a state took a lot of that land, but as a result of the Supreme Court decision, tribes will have a lot more sovereignty in that state, as well as strengthening tribal sovereignty nationwide. Population of Indian country, as you see in Arizona, that's one of the higher populated states of Indian population. I encourage everybody, this is an important time with the 2020 census, everyone do whatever you can to encourage Indian people to participate in the census, because as we know, that's what the federal government uses to determine need with federal resources. So it's very important that we participate and do whatever we can with Indian families that we may be working with to ensure and to help make sure that they participate in the census data. I feel that's very important for us at this key time of federal services and things of that nature. Here's some reservation statistics from 2010. One of our participants from Nevada was going, where's Nevada? And she's right, it's just, I believe it was number 18 in 2010 and actually number 10 in overall per capita representation. So this is just all and in combination statistics for the various states in the United States, as well as reservation populations. As you see, my home res, Pine Ridge, is second to the Navajo Nation that is in the Four Corners area. Here's the population, 1492. The statistics say anywhere between 5 and 20 million were in what is now the United States. There is statistical proof that there were over 100 million people in the Americas prior to Columbus in the Caribbean at the time. But as you see, our numbers were significantly reduced, and that's a result of genocidal efforts. We just need to call it what it is. It was attempted genocide. But what we see now is, I'm hoping in 2020, we come to at least the low level of the estimate of population. Hopefully we are at the 5 million level in 2020, and it took quite a long time to regain our original population. So we are a young population. The majority of our population is under the age of 25. So a lot of young disability issues are going to be out there, as well as transition is a big issue for Indian country. Poverty is another element of impacts to disability. As you see, Rapid City has over 50% poverty rates for Indian citizens, and that's next to my home res in South Dakota. And you see a few other areas in Arizona represented that have high Native populations. So again, the census is very important. 2010, all census data has been underreported for Indian country, and that impacts disability services. So again, it's very important and a key time for us to participate in the census as best we can to ensure that our numbers are more accurate, because there's always discrepancy between tribal enrollment office numbers and census numbers. So we need to do our best to make sure our folks are counted. So when you think of a legal right to health care, we are the only population in the US with a legal right to health care with a promise of all proper care and protection. These are terms used in treaties and contracts and compacts from the US government to Indian country. But here in South Dakota, we see a significant difference in life expectancy. And as you all are aware, disability also impacts life expectancy, as it did with my father. So it was amazing that my dad made it to the age of 70. And I think it was due to our family approach. And of course, having medical professionals in the family was always a bonus to make sure dad was getting the services that he needed. So here you see the life expectancy is significantly different for our non-Indian folks compared to our tribal members. And it's even more exacerbated on the reservations themselves. So here you see a healthcare chart that my brother, Dr. Don Warren, he runs the InMed program at University of North Dakota. And here I learned from him some of the discrepancies of expenditures for healthcare. So remember the term all proper care. So the promise of all proper care and protection. So you see to the right, at the time, Medicare, this is an older graph, the amount is over 10,000 now, but you see the variances of healthcare expenditure. And the most telling expenditure is Bureau of Prisons. They actually do not put this data out anymore, so it's not available. But as you see at this time, the Bureau of Prisons had twice the amount of health care than Indian Health Service. So what does that tell us statistically? What does that tell us from a congressional standpoint? What is the importance of the promise of all proper care and protection? So again, when I advocate in DC and I'm on the Hill walking the hallways of Senate and House, I ask for at least equal amount of funding to our Bureau of Prisons so that our prisoners and our tribal members are getting at least equal health care, and that would double Indian Health Service expenditures. Many are aware that Indian Health Service is funded at 60%, so obviously they can't do the work they need, and this impacts disability because many folks that are in crisis need proper health care and are needing to be transported or just don't have access to that health care, and disability situations are exacerbated as a result. So I always point out that we're in the Constitution. We should be getting all proper care and protection as promised. But unfortunately, the history of US government and tribal nation relationships have been, need for improvement, we'll just say there. So again, this is the impact of sovereignty. So, we have a little bit of a thing there, but I think you can read this okay. Average life expectancy. Hawaii is the highest. So I guess island living and Pacific Islanders are doing pretty good in terms of highest rate of life expectancy. Mississippi, unfortunately, has the lowest rate. And as we know, many unserved and underserved populations reside in Mississippi. And some of the poorest counties are in Mississippi, as well as South Dakota. Some of the, I believe 4 of the top 10 poorest counties in the United States are counties that have reservations in South Dakota. So many of my people, my family, are living in poverty and having many challenges with poverty, and obviously that impacts ability for vocational rehabilitation to do the work they do with disability and employment outcome. An interesting statistic I found was just 400 miles away, Summit County in Colorado has the highest life expectancy, and then Pine Ridge, my home, 400 miles away, has the lowest. So it's something is going wrong here. And the reality of COVID-19 and our current pandemic is now national news is identifying quote unquote unserved and underserved populations. So now that it's national news, many federal agencies are paying attention to grants and opportunities. So I encourage you to look for new grants. Some of the support acts that have been put out there for this pandemic include academics. So look for those opportunities to get some funding and supports for your programs that are unique for COVID-19 situations. So again, for men, it's under 60 years, and on Pine Ridge, it's under 50 years life expectancy. So it's amazing that people are dying before 50 on average. And if that was somewhere else, for instance, in San Diego County here where I live, that would be a public health crisis. So that's something that we need to address. And with the the horrible murder of George Floyd, some of the outcome, again, we need to think of the positive outcomes of horrible events. And that's a reality of human history. Civil rights is a product of that. And Representative John Lewis, I've been reading his works after his funeral yesterday. And we have a long way to go still in terms of civil rights. And that includes people with disabilities. But some of the racial issues have also brought attention to underserved and unserved populations, of which we in Indian country are well aware that we have many of those discrepancies that we're dealing with. Here in 2004, I highlighted was some of the statistics from what we're dealing with. And we're 770% more likely to die from alcoholism. You see the tuberculosis, the diabetes, all of that was very impactful, 16 years ago. What has changed? Has anything changed? Are we still dealing with some of these issues, particularly with the current pandemic? Now, Klein Griggs, Cola, a very good friend of mine, was a former Tribal Voc Rehab director, and he just this month lost his brother to COVID-19. And I know my brothers and sisters in Navajo Nation are the highest per capita rate of COVID-19. So once again, we in Indian country are feeling the effects of these negative realities of COVID-19 as well as racial relations in the United States. So we are truly living in historic times. One of the fallacies out there or myths is that all Indians are alcoholics. And you see here the circle that shows 7+ drinks is significant, particularly for folks living on the reservation. But have you ever heard that we are the most sober population in the United States? When you think of non-drinkers, look at the reservation data, there is significantly representative of sobriety. So again, many of these folks in Indian country are very strong traditionally, culturally. They have that connection to their past generations and are able to maintain sobriety. So I just want to kind of change that myth as well, is that we are not all alcoholics. As a matter of fact, many of our folks on the reservation are the highest rate of folks that are abstaining from alcohol. So that is, I'd rather have that statistic out there than the negative statistic. But obviously there is significant alcoholism challenges, particularly for disability, and it exacerbates diabetes and of course violence and accidents and orthopedic disabilities that come about as a result of alcoholism, and dependency is significant. But again, it's not the common element that we're having to deal with. But although we see there is some significant issues with dependency still, in particular on reservations that have low socioeconomic opportunity. So studies show that dependency is exacerbated and increased in areas where there's no jobs available and just a high poverty. Disability rates, again, just assume the worst. Unfortunately, we in an Indian country have a lot of these. Oops, I'm sorry, I got my, I forgot to take that out, I apologize. I don't know if you heard that or not, but maybe it woke some of you up anyway. But here's some of the disability laws. So again, back in the '68, Navajo Community College, and I want to acknowledge Elmer Guy. He's kind of the grandpa of disability and voc rehab for tribal voc rehab. And he was one of my instructors at San Diego State as well, and taught me as well as the students a wealth of information on the efforts that Navajo Nation took in terms of inclusion in the rehabilitation system and disability. So you see some of the disability laws that are out there, and of course, Rehabilitation Act is one of those that are providing services to Indian country with employment outcome. So here we're looking at the current pandemic. And for us in Indian country, unfortunately, this is nothing new. We've gone through several pandemics some of them on purpose. In colonial days, when England was, it was a colonial English America, Governor Amherst, it's written, there's letters, and I have presentations on that as well. But they did provide infected blankets, his lieutenants and things. They wrote providing infected blankets with smallpox in those days. Now with American government records, there is no written proof of any purposeful pandemics. But in Indian country, we have heard the stories of the Indian agents on the reservations. And in those days, unfortunately, our reservations were internment camps, concentration camps. And many Indian agents were not, let's say, representing Native people in a good way. So again, here's some of the issues that we're dealing with, particularly in Arizona. As we know nationally, Arizona got a lot of attention after reopening, that there's a major spike in cases. Unfortunately, Navajo Nation was already there prior to the reopening, and all that's done is exacerbate the situation for not only Navajo Nation, but the 19 tribes in Arizona, as well as border tribes in the other states. So this is something that is very real. I was at Hoopa, my wife's res, last week, and at there, right on the tribal border, there's a state sign, a state highway sign, one of those lighted signs that they put to the side of the road, indicating that Hoopa Nation is under lockdown. So the governor of California even provided a sign for the tribe to use. And so that's a working relationship that's positive. Now in South Dakota, my tribe, Oglala Lakota Nation on Pine Ridge, instituted checkpoints to help reduce spread and to make sure that we have tracking of people on the reservation. And unfortunately, the governor of South Dakota tried to call in federal folks to stop us from doing that. And I'm sure it's going to be a court case, but at least I'm very proud of my people, or my tribe, the people that are protecting our elders and our community. So again, every state has different relationships with their government. So again, it's a government to government sovereignty issue. And that's right, 10% of all Supreme Court cases impact Indian country in some capacity. So here we'll transition over into the Rehabilitation Act. And it's been amended as a result of WIOA, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. So now we have some new regulations, but a lot of the services and basic services are the same. And again, for my tribal VR relatives out there, please share any new information and approaches that you're utilizing for your community so that we can share with the group today. So some of those new challenges are opportunities. So again, even though, again, as I mentioned, the negative realities of COVID in the United States now, the negative realities of racial, awakening, if you will, in America, this is an opportunity for us to create new programs and approaches to our people. Now, again, back in the 90s, we were having trouble with access to internet. Now it's many of the internet is much improved on reservations, not perfect by any means, but at least there's availability in most of our tribal nations. Again, not perfect, but because at Pine Ridge, I know a few of the dirt roads where I can park on and have access to internet service to do a presentation in my car while I'm on the res. So I think many of you that live on the res have similar stories regarding access, but the reality is, even with access, the majority of our people don't have the capacity to use that access. Now, Voc Rehab, the wonderful part of tribal Voc Rehab is the immense amount of services available as long as that consumer of Voc Rehab services wants to get employment as an outcome. So when you think of all the unemployment, the 50 million people that have applied for unemployment as a result of this pandemic, obviously, again, underserved populations, which in most cases, American Indian, Alaska Natives are the most underserved population. Many of our people have been hit by the unemployment reality. So what are new opportunities with us in tribal Voc Rehab is creation of distance business. Something that I've seen on Facebook is the social distance. I prefer physical distance, powwow. But again, you see people sharing stories, and my wife even shared some of my films on there. But you see people selling their wares that they would normally be doing at powwows and other events that we're missing out on. We're not able to, as social people in Indian country, we're not able to get together with these summer ceremonies, our sun dances, our other ceremonies and other tribes. We're not able to have those because of the current situation. So yesterday, Wayne sang a beautiful honor and prayer song for families and youth for the Head Start folks. And we got a lot of comments that people just enjoyed hearing the song and the music and the culture. So somehow, what can we do utilizing digital platforms, particularly with a young population in Indian country? Remember, most of us are under 25, so I'm one of those old guys out there, elder in training, or maybe I'm an elder already and don't realize it. But again, this is an opportunity with a negative reality. And we're going to have, it's not going to get back to normal. When people say we need to get back to normal, it's never going to be the same, because now pandemic is part of our circle, our reality. And this is something that's just going to continue as pandemics continue to evolve. So again, the resiliency of Native people with past pandemics and the ability to not only survive, but to get through that and maintain our culture is something that we have in our DNA. So again, even though we're getting hit hard again by a pandemic in this century, what can we use traditionally from past generations to prepare the future generations for these pandemics that are coming? So again, what kind of virtual supports can we have? There's a lot of, you see a lot of kids and even adults are on their phones, and you see a lot of folks utilizing their phones for work. So again, how can we create some virtual self-employment business utilizing existing social media and turn that into a format for business? For instance, I rarely used Facebook, but after I became a filmmaker, I started using Facebook more to share information regarding some of the stories and films that are out there. So I'm using it socially, yes, but also as a potential business opportunity. And that's what I encourage tribal voc rehab in Indian country to start thinking about, because this pandemic, this current pandemic, is going to be with us for longer than many are expecting. So we're kind of going through an experiment in America right now. It seems that our elders are the ones that are being put at risk. It's beyond my comprehension that we would want to put our elders at risk. But as we know, in Indian country, elders are a very revered and respected cultural element in our Tioshpaye, our communities. So it's kind of weird to see elected officials saying that grandma and grandpa would be willing to give their lives so that the kids could go back to work. So that's kind of an unbalance I see in America that we're dealing with, not only in race relations, but in gender, not gender, but generational respect for our elders. And it seems that we're just allowing that to just go by in America. And I'm hoping that we evolve as Americans to put a higher value on our elder population, because they're the wisdom keepers, they're the traditional educators, and we can't lose that. So when you see voc rehab, the VR services under Section 103 is very immense, and you can provide a lot of services. And Indian country tribal VR, the majority of employment outcomes are self-employment. So when you look at the pre-sections, Section 21 identifies us as underserved populations. So Title I of the Rehabilitation Act, as amended under Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, is voc rehab services. And under Title I is where the voc rehab programs are funded. So the partners are RSA, Rehab Services Administration, under Department of Education, the umbrella of Department of Ed, administers the RSA programs, and RSA administers Title I, 3, 6, 7, as well as Protection and Advocacy, Section 509, which is the foundation of what the Americans with Disabilities Act is formulated on, that we have today. So that's essentially the civil rights for people with disabilities. And as I identified, Section 21 is traditionally underserved populations. We, under Section 21, are identified as the highest rate of disability than any other cultural group in America. So obviously, Indian country, we have a high rate of disability. And with this new situation, the new pandemic reality, what can we do as service providers, as support people, to think outside the circle, if you will? What can we do to create something with this new reality and think long term, that let's assume that there'll be more pandemics in the future, and how can we utilize some of our education and training and services through our state partners as well as Tribal Voc Rehab to guide and counsel individuals to think more so than just powwow selling and having those businesses that on the res highway, if you will, the powwow highway, but start thinking about utilizing Facebook and other social media to market their artwork and things of that nature. So if you go to Facebook and look up social distance powwow, you'll see hundreds of thousands of Indian people communicating, and many are sharing some of their artwork because they can't get out to these events physically to not only have that social interaction, but to conduct their business. It's their livelihood. So in terms of employment outcomes, think of what can we create for self-employment that would be assistance to some of these folks that are missing out on some of the ceremonies and celebrations and events that we have in Indian country, that many of our events have been rescheduled or canceled as a result of COVID. So there's Tribal VR throughout the United States. As you see, Tribal Voc Rehab is getting out there and impacting a lot of our tribal nations that now have opportunity to get services for disabilities. So many of the Tribal VR programs, for instance, I wrote the Sequan grant in San Diego County back in 1995. And at the time, that was the first California Tribal VR program in history. And the particular program serves San Diego County, which includes 17 separate tribal nations, as well as a significant urban population of 25,000 in San Diego County. So even though it's one program, it impacts a multitude of Native people on the res as well as off. So Navajo Nation was the first. So again, Elmer Guy and Trevo Roanhorse, thank you so much for your advocacy and representing all tribal nations in a good way so that we could establish Tribal Voc Rehab. So as you see, Navajo Nation was the first to get Tribal VR. I've been personally to 52 of the Tribal VR programs, and that was a wonderful experience to travel to all those tribal nations and learn from their vocational rehab programs and the different approaches they utilize to appropriately provide services for their particular tribal nation. So it's wonderful to see. This is old data. I'd love to get current data from 2010 to 2020, but it's wonderful the impacts and employment outcomes that you see with Tribal Voc Rehab programs. So I would imagine some of the programs have updated information, and this will be an allowance for us to grow in programs. And you know what? I don't have a clock in front of me. How am I doing, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just about to say, Jim, thank you for this great information. This is fantastic. But
yeah, let me finish here. I'll get through my students.
I know that you have so much more, but we do only have just about 15 minutes left. And I know that.
Well, let me close on this one, and then let's allow folks to ask questions. And I think people that know me for years, I just kind of go on and just forget where I am. So I apologize. Thank you, Jeff.
No, no worries. Thank you.
But here is a picture that my brother uses, and equality versus equity. So you see the picture of there's equality while there's still people left out, and equity, now everyone has the ability to see, but wouldn't it be wonderful to have a society without offense? And that is our goal, I think. And I think many of our programs in Indian country are addressing those realities of how can we be truly inclusive and have no barriers or fences that we must address through equity and equality. So again, our healing approaches, let's utilize our talking circles. Elders and spiritual leaders are very important. We may be able to create some businesses where they can share their information for accreditation as an example. So just think outside the circle so that we can create more programs out there. And again, you know, Chief Seattle identified that we're all part of the circle, all part of the web. All things are bound together, all things connect. And Sitting Bull was addressing the future generations, 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind. And let us put our minds together and see what life we can make for not only our children, but for all people, all human beings in the US. And it's all about the future generations. So thank you for listening. I apologize for going long, but I appreciate the work that you're doing, and remember that you are impacting future generations through the work that you're doing. So never discount the impacts that you're having on families, individuals, and future and past generations. The past generations are proud of what you're doing, and I'm proud of what you do as well. So Palamia Washte.
Jeff, do you want to facilitate the questions? I know there's a small handful in the chat box, or do you want me to help with that?
Yeah, I got it. So Michael Leva posted in the chat, Jim, can you share examples of self-employment that are out of the circle?
Oh, you're on mute, Jim.
Okay, there we go. So again, through the Voc Rehab, and I'm obviously a believer in tribal Voc Rehab, but I think that is a primary resource that we can utilize for our tribal folks to think out of the circle in terms of we can create a trading post virtually. So instead of having a trading post on the res per se for tourists, now we can create virtual trading posts where maybe a dozen Tribal VR programs could combine resources and create a website for consumers of Voc Rehab that are artists, and they can share their art. And I think that would be a worldwide opportunity because so many other countries are interested in Native art and culture. This would be an opportunity for Tribal VR to create a format working in partnership, and then we'd have a multitude of Tribal Nation artwork available along with the stories coming from the artists. That would be a wonderful platform for sales. That's kind of what I was thinking of when I saw the social distance powwow Facebook with over 200,000 members. Imagine what we can do worldwide with a virtual trading post as an example. I brought up our elders. Many of those elders, we could create videos because now with the attention being brought to racial issues in our curriculum, some of those elders could be recorded, and that could be academic resources available to sell to school districts or wherever throughout, so that we could be educating through our elder perspectives and having a more appropriate curriculum coming from us. So I'm just coming off the top of my head on some ideas I've been thinking of in terms of what will COVID bring us. You know, obviously we see the negatives, but the positives, you know, I mean, it's been wonderful. My wife's over there. We've been isolated together, so we still like each other. So, so again, we're thinking, oh, what can we do? What would COVID do in terms of relationship building for marriage and family? So again, could that be a resource or a product that we could produce from an Indian perspective? Because we were just seeing all these programs run by non-Indian people that utilize our spirituality, you know, sweat lodges and smudging and things of that nature. Why don't we do that and share in an appropriate way whatever we could to do to open up our culture to America so that more interest is, and more importantly, truth and accuracy. So those are a few ideas. Any other ideas, folks, throw out there that you're doing now with your programs that you may not have been doing prior to COVID, so that we can copy and paste those and share them with the participants? Because I know many of you out there have thought outside the circle already, and as a result of this new challenge have created new opportunities as a result. So I hope that gives you some ideas.
Great. And then I've gotten a few requests for your PowerPoint presentation. Is it okay if we share with the people who have participated today?
Yeah, then you can see the rest of it. Hey.
And Jimmy, we've had a lot of requests to have you have another session to continue. So I put it there, yes, that we'll look after you again. Everybody wants to hear the rest of it. So.
Well, that's good. I didn't get to finish, so maybe that'll. But again, please share those ideas so I can incorporate it into mine. I always learn. You know, we're never too old to learn. Even though I got all my wisdom highlights going here, I still have some more wisdom to go. So. Again, that's nice to see some of the names of my old friends in Travel VR, and I miss you guys, and it's been wonderful to be able to share with you today. Oh, yeah, is there any more comments or questions we can address before we go?
So I'm a little bit behind, but I know Annette Yazzie posted that just asking if there are any Navajo or Hopi VR reps on this meeting that she can connect with to share services. Bailey Lockwood says, thank you for your presentation. Would you be able to share some more examples of how you are adapting your work to our new digital reality? For instance, do you have any strategies for sharing your work online or on social media?
Oh, well, as a result of doing a Facebook post video, I was interviewed by Indian Country Today last week, or maybe a week and a half ago while I was up in Hoopa. And I decided to do a little intro short film to the interview, and I posted it. And my wife and other friends have been saying I should be doing this long ago, but I'm going to be doing other videos. So that's kind of a educational approach to potential business. So as I make these videos, it could lead into other film projects or requests for presentations on certain subject matters. So I see that from a personal standpoint as an opportunity, not only to share education, because I'm not on the road, I'm always on the road in an airplane, but I haven't traveled since February. So I want to be able to create a forum to where I can still share my educational approach virtually, digitally. So it's forced me, this pandemic, to go out there and do that. And now I'm going to do that on a regular basis. For instance, my next short I'm going to work on today is the impact of Nixon and tribal sovereignty from his famous speech 50 years ago this month. So look out for that on Facebook. If any of you are on my Facebook, I'm also going to do a YouTube page. And believe me, with YouTube videos and all that, if we record some of our elders, and when I do filmmaking classes for youth, I always encourage them to record their elders, record your grandparents, because not only will that be awesome for family archives, but it could lead to something in an educational format or film format or something along those lines. So again, it's thinking outside the circle to expand your audience, if you will, and opportunity for business as a result. And that's why I love Travel VR. It's based in empowerment and employment outcomes. So it is very good to be able to do that. So I think that's...
And I'll jump in real quick, Jim, because we are coming down on 8 minutes. I don't believe that Kristen Mackey's on. However, anybody from Voc Rehab Tribal, help us out. There's multiple questions. I'll just combine them all about youth in transition and how to connect. There's 2 or 3 people asked that question. I don't know if you wanted to add anything there, and anyone from VR, if you wanted to talk about things that are being funded. Our understanding, Kristen, jump in now if you're on, but I didn't see that her on. And we know things are a little different, but from the Voc Rehab and Tribal VR, but they've been very, very open and willing to talk about how they will fund services virtually if there are needs for potentially for technology, for internet, things like that out on the reservations and just anywhere really. Yeah. You guys we just encourage you to ask for what you need for the people that you're serving and for your individuals. And it's not uncommon that they will be creative and pay for it, even if it's something you're not typically typically that you would ask for. And I was going to just mention very quickly the Arizona Youth Leadership Forum that is also partially funded by Voc Rehab and doing some pre-employment transition services. They had to do all their forums remotely this year with young people, and they were very successful, and they reached a lot of individuals on the native lands because a lot of us are involved and worked with them. And so there's definitely ways to do this. It's all virtual. They had people engaged, that they were kind of surprised, but they got students to be involved. So Velma, I mean, I know you very well, and there's others on here. If anyone wants to join in and add anything very last minute about any kind of things you're seeing to share in Arizona and funding, I'm sorry that I just threw you in there, Velma. It's just I know you very well. Or Paula, if Paula's on, anything you guys wanted to add? Or of course, if Kristen's on from Voc Rehab.
If I could real quick follow up on
Yeah.
that. Tribal Voc Rehab directors, when you're working with the state director, find out if they're reaching their 15% minimum spending for transition. And many states are having difficulty reaching that 15% minimum criteria that the federal funding requires. That's an opportunity for partnership because we're a young population. We have a lot of youth with disabilities. We can help our state partners with reaching that funding level when they fund special services. Like in South Dakota, we've had a couple res, catch the wave, they call it in South Dakota, interesting enough. But we were on the res doing those services for res kids, and they funded that through so that they could reach their 15% minimum spending for transition. So I always suggest being that opportunity and resource through Tribal VR is we can help you reach that 15%.
And that's a great point. And we do struggle sometimes, each state, including ours, to get that funding spent. And I did want to mention Bailey Lockwood's comment because she had an idea about sending women care packages with videos, demonstration materials, other content to empower women to learn the curriculum from home. That's one way they've done things to adapt to COVID. I don't know, Jeff, you and I mean, there's a lot coming in, so I'm probably missing things too. So anybody else want to add anything in the last 4 minutes, including you, Jim, that you might want to share?
Good morning. This is Velma Spencer. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks,
okay.
Velma.
I'm with the Navajo Nation. I'm the VR program supervisor, and I just wanted to share within this past school year, it had been a real challenge, or it is a real challenge, to get things started with the pre-ETS piece on transition with the schools here on Navajo Nation. I was just reading some of the comments in the chat box, but we were working closely with Melissa and Satara with the Diverse Ability Incorporated group, and her organization, of course, is based out of Phoenix, but we're wanting to really touch on peer-based pre-ET services for the Navajo Nation and using peers to work closely with the reservation schools. And so we kind of have our foot in the door, and we were hoping to get her started up here. And right around that time, of course, the Navajo Nation as a whole has been, pretty much on shutdown. And so now that schools are restarting again, we're hoping we can do a lot of this with the virtual platform to get it started. So there's a lot we can do. And I know with Susan there, we're talking about possibly looking at Project Search. We do have a Project Search program in our neighboring state, which is Gallup. And we're hoping that we can also do that and get some discussions going with setting something out, hopefully with the Arizona side. So, and then we have the Arizona Community of Practice transition, where we do have people serving on the committee that serve as ambassadors. And I know Tuba City has a community of practice going. So there are a lot of resources like Jim is sharing, and we just really need to touch base and do a lot more discussions on how we can approach this along with the EverTech group and Flagstaff. So thank you. This is a very good presentation.
I appreciate you kind of bringing that full circle. Diversibility Incorporated they're the AZYLF, the Arizona Youth Leadership Firms I mentioned. That is what is under that. Melly operates those, and they are working closely with Voc Rehab and us, as well as we have a huge pre-ETS project that we're just getting started with Voc Rehab as a Sonoran Youth Data Model Development Program, and we will be reaching out to folks like you. We have a very specific initiative to work with Native American population. So there's definitely some things coming. We're just getting started with that one, and we will be looking and seeking schools to work with. So some opportunities are coming, and we thank you, Velma, for bringing that up. That's very helpful. I think we've got 1 minute left. I don't know if we can answer this question or not. Is there an agency you recommend? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Just wanted to say that participants will receive a certificate of attendance, and that also I think people have seen it in the chat box, but please take our survey. Your feedback matters. We take it into consideration for future sessions. So please, thank you.
Yeah, Lynn,
if you want to contact me, you can reach me at warriorfoundation@gmail.com. So just FYI.
I mean, we can save the chats, and maybe you can look at the questions and see if there's, you know, any that we missed that you might want to be able to add something to when we post things on the landing page, where everybody will have access to all the information and the recording from today.
Very good.
So it's 12 o'clock. We are super grateful for this lovely Friday webinar, and it sounds like you all learned a lot. It sounds like we might be bringing Jimmy back again. So I don't know if there's anything else, Wendy or Jeff, but we're grateful for your time. And we've got 2 more lined up in August, so look for the next ones coming up. And with that, I hope you all have a great, safe, healthy weekend. Thank you so much, Jim, and all of the feedback from you folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much.
Bye.
Wonderful to get the questions and be with you. So, Palamia, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.